There
everyone.
is.
I am Julia of Divine Realignment, and I have got my friend Jamie of Inspired by J. Marie with me again. And we're on the second episode of this three-part series talking about the program that we just created with Deep Timeline Healing. It's going to be launching at the end of May, so just keep your eye out for that. But today we're going to be going deeper into what we were talking about last week. So I think in particular, Jamie and I discussed that we were going to be more specific about past lives, timelines, time in general, and clearing up maybe some misconceptions so that we can all be on the same page when we work together.
Yes. So I think that in pulling back from last week when you were discussing, or we were discussing these, we called it an overlay onto the divine blueprint, a really precise way to think of the misconception that our timeline is a past life. Because neither one of us ascribe to that we need the energy of our past lives. It's something we can be curious about. It's something that we can definitely take strength from, but it's understanding that that is not what we're here to do. We're disrupting things if we are connecting into that, which is essentially what deep timeline healing is not. We're not going into another timeline. We're correcting this one to make sure that we're on the clear path.
To put it into, I guess, less woo-woo terms, not more.
Yes.
When you are pulling from what you might consider to be a past life, it's literally you trying to be somebody else. And you can't even do that now, right? Like I can't be like, oh, I'm actually Pamela Anderson. That's what that kind of sounds like. Like that's not what it is. No one's Cleopatra, like if you were Cleopatra, you'd be Cleopatra right now. You wouldn't be Bill in Montana or Julia in Michigan. Like that's just not how that works. And it's probably the most controversial thing I say, that past lives are not actually you. But it's important. And it's one of the things, it's the very first bubble that my guides burst for me when I started learning about the Akash. Because when I was like initiated and I went through the whole process and I kept asking for my book, and it took a while because I didn't necessarily get a book. It was weird. Mine was unique, but everyone around me was talking about, oh, I'm this famous person or this famous person. And I'm like, why am I not getting anything interesting? The very first thing they told me is they're like, you don't have any past lives. And I was like, that is boring. Like everyone else has all of these cool stories. They're like, nope, you're fresh. And so that was not just earth shaking to me, but particularly when you start getting into New Age spirituality in particular, it's this idea that everyone has had hundreds upon hundreds of past lives. Nobody doesn't have a past life. You just don't remember it. And so I believed that I had past lives because I'm like, oh, I love the Renaissance. I feel connected to all these points in history. I love this subject and this subject. There are similarities in my soul and in my calling that call out to those points in history. And on some multidimensional level, I probably have vibed with those people from those times. But it doesn't mean that I personally was there. That's not what that is. And it took me about 6 months to accept that information because I was like, I deny that and would like another analysis. Thank you. Like, it took me a really long time to be like, okay, what are you even talking about? And it does go back to the whole soul blueprint thing. And that was the very, very first thing that they ever taught me because I studied under a medium trying to learn mediumship, but got the soul blueprints. And it was this very firm idea that every person is unique. They first show them to me as like a snowflake, with that idea that like every snowflake is unique and special and different. And if you are unique and special and different, then you are unique and special and different from Cleopatra. Cleopatra was their own person and you are your own person now. And that is the very first thing that you have to understand if you're going to move any kind of way in this work. But anytime someone comes to me and they're like, I would really like to know about my past life in Germany, I'm like, well, I have some bad news for you. But it's really great news, right? Because now you're free
Right.
to be your own person and you don't have to keep
Exactly.
reliving these traumas or these pain
Hmm.
points that you guys, it's you brought up reciprocity yesterday. Like attracts
Hmm.
like. That's why you
Yes.
keep vibing with this other life. That's why it feels like you, because
Hmm.
you're recognizing you and them and you. I mean, we're all God,
Yes.
right? We're all
Right.
fractals of
Absolutely.
divinity. So you're going to feel that connection, particularly when you're vibing at oneness, which is what you're playing with right there. But
Hmm.
if you're like, "Oh my gosh, like my mother-in-law hates me as much as their mother-in-law hates them. Like this is why we're cursed. I've had this curse for 400 years on me." And it's like, "Oh no." Talk about adding problems on top of problems on top of problems.
Yes.
And so this is why this is actually a liberating idea, because this is
Hmm.
not your problem. Your
Right.
problem is separate. What you can do though is look at that and be like, well, is there some perspective that I can gain from
Hmm.
viewing this? If we're a mirror in some way, what is easier for me to see by viewing this perspective than it is for me
Hmm.
to view my own? And so you were saying earlier that there's a distinct difference between timelines and past lives. Do you want to get into that?
Yes. Well, I even see them different energetically. When I see somebody connecting to a past life or what they assume to be their past life, they're creating an energetic cord. And a cord is separate than what a timeline is. An energetic cord is, like I said last week, you're feeding into each other. And the way I see it, or my guides have shown me energetically, is so we have these lives that we're either living concurrently or perhaps part of our oversoul is living, but it's not us. They always speak to me in metaphors. And it's the way they showed it to me is like you have a batch of blueberry muffins. You're making blueberry muffins and you have all this batter, but each tin gets its own part of that blueberry muffin mix. So if that helps people conceptualize what and bring it into physicality, that's what we're saying. We're saying, yes, you are the soul, but your soul is into these little pieces. So yes, maybe part of your allness, your oneness with consciousness has this past life in France in 1890. And so maybe that's why, like you can taste a hint of that because it's a part of your oneness with the everything. But it's not you. You're your own muffin or your own snowflake. And it doesn't help to try and put yourself into that tin that's meant for somebody else. It does no good for you. And it doesn't help you at all because you are pulling on things like poverty. You're pulling on things like maybe dark magic that you don't want a part of. You're pulling on things like we talked about last week, all of those things. And there are good things as well. I think I like that when you were talking about that mirrored reflection, it's similar how we talk about in ancestral healing that our ancestors gave us so much, right? Like they gave us so much to heal. They gave us really good stuff too. My
Mm.
ancestors gave me a deep love for nature and strength and wisdom. And so it's understanding that I am not my ancestors. I am not that past life. They are things that I resonate with, but they are not me. They're not mine. Versus a timeline is mine. This is my line. This
Mm.
is what I'm meant to do. And when we get into deep timeline healing, really a lot of what we're doing is cutting some of those energetic cords or those different timelines that you've been pulling into your own. And so
Yeah.
we're clearing that so that it can actually begin to flow and it can actually begin to be useful to you. In a personal example, I worked with a client once and we did some timeline work, and she kept having fear around having children and she couldn't understand why. It was sort of what she wanted, but she kept having fear around it. And of course, that was sort of affecting fertility. And so I went into her timeline and saw that she was pulling from a past life. She
Mm.
was pulling from a past life where she was a teacher and It was like World War II, which, I mean, can you imagine like having that living inside of your energetic field? She had attempted to protect these children and it didn't work out, sadly. And as soon as we were able to clear that, she had such an emotional release. And I had to remind her, that's not you. I understand that you're having this emotional release, but that grieving that you're feeling isn't even yours. And you are attaching to that past life and creating more havoc for that person's life because they're not able to rest peacefully because you continue to feed your energy of fear and grieving into it. So when we're talking about this timeline healing, that's the difference. It's you are disconnecting not only the energetic cord that you're creating, but you are cutting the time away that isn't yours so that you can begin to have the things that you really do want. But for whatever reason, you have attached this idea to needing to be this other person.
Yeah. I like the blueberry example because it's a great way of explaining. Every blueberry muffin is made of the same ingredients. It has the same stuff, but it is structurally different, right? If you open up a blueberry, they're not all gonna look identical. They may look very similar, but there will be minute differences and changes that make them unique. That's just how that is, right? Like my brother and I look a heck of a lot alike, but there are some important differences there. Right?
Yes.
And we have chromosomes in common and like we have the same parents, but we're our own people. And you brought up an excellent point. Let's say that there was that life in France. And this brings up the concept of the oversoul, which some people equate to the higher self. I don't quite do that. I think the higher self is just an expanded perspective that we can embody it right now in this lifetime. The oversoul is like, if God is everything, to make it more digestible, there's the oversoul, which is also God, but condensed. And then we create more of us. Other lived experiences and entities.
I always think of the oversoul as our mother plant. And then we're like the little clones are the higher selves. And then the higher self is just with us, helping us grow.
Yes.
Like
that's a great way of putting it. Yeah. So that oversoul has all of the ingredients, and all of the ingredients are being put in those little sprouts, I guess. And you'll notice that you maybe have a lot of honor or integrity in this need to serve and protect. And so you perhaps feel really connected to this person going through something in France right now. And so that's why you're picking up that life. And it also brings to consciousness the idea that, okay, so I personally, Julia, have only ever been Julia, ever. However, if I go up just a little higher, past the higher self, into the oversoul, even beyond that, when we're accepting oneness and everything, maybe I have kind of had a past life from a linear perspective.
Yeah.
But that's only possible when you accept God consciousness.
Correct.
And I think it's kind of.
And accept, I think what we're getting to here, that's a really important point that I would like to highlight, is that it's about getting to the authenticity of who you are. It is really living as who you're meant to be without the constraints of the things that are affecting this, because they're not ours. They're not ours. They're these repeating cycles, and some of these limitations and some of these beliefs aren't ours. Some of them are. I'm not discounting. I'm not saying that we're all beautiful and perfect and not meant to have these challenges in our life. Absolutely not. I've lived enough life to know that. However, I've had enough experience to realize that some of it that has lived in my ancestral line, or that has lived in generational cycles, or that I've pulled from past lives, those aren't mine. And it's by doing this deep work that I've been able to realize that. And then that frees me up to be the authentic person that I am. And that's really what we're trying to get. We're trying to empower people to live their authentic life and to love the person that they are.
That's the secret mission of the work, isn't it?
It is.
That's really what this is all about. It's trying to get you to be you and to live that divine mission, to be your Christ itself, essentially.
And to be excited, yes, to be
Mhm.
excited to be part of this divine consciousness, to be part of the Christos, to be part of Earth, and to have that fullness in who you are. And it frees up so much energy. I think that that's the most important part I've seen when I've done this work for myself or other people, is it frees up so much energy. It is so activating. It is so attuning. And it just makes life so much easier when you're not pulling trunks of other people's baggage behind you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. The idea of past lives is an interesting one to explore. It scatters you, though.
Right.
You know, it
It does.
scatters your
Right.
energy. And if
Yes.
there is a way to deal with that in a healthy way
Mm-hmm.
where you dissolve the self enough to be like,
Mm-hmm.
if this is all me, then is this oneness? Can I be all of these
Right.
things all at once? Can I dissolve the self enough to contemplate this idea? And that is a valuable mission and lesson, right? Like that's almost like the
Yes.
oversoul perspective, really.
Yes.
But most of us don't do that, right? We come from
Correct.
the, oh, this is the progression of me, myself only
Right. Over time.
over
You're correct.
time.
Right.
And so I have evolved into this being because of all these. And be honest, when you're going into a past life, you're not picking up fun things.
No.
Yeah,
Generally,
no.
no.
You're hunting down the horrible things.
Yes.
This is why I can't have nice things, essentially. And that
Mm-hmm.
is what's happening. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're essentially trying to evolve through trauma, which, hey, is a thing, but it's not how that has to be. And
Correct.
so that is why we hope to shift perspective on that for
Mm-hmm.
people because it can be
Yes.
really done in a different way. Past life work is often engaged with before people do consciousness work, which
Yes.
I think should probably come first.
I think it would be helpful for it to come first, because I have had that higher level of experience of the understanding that I am all of these things. The way that I describe it, that most people might be able to understand, or that I've been able to reconcile it, is my guides have told me that when you're thinking of a past life or you resonate with something, I'll use myself as an example. I've been shown that there's this concurrent experience of, again, the France thing, like Joan of Arc, or being royalty in Egypt, or Lemurian, or Atlantis. Like, those things really do. Like, I've cried reading descriptions, channeled descriptions of Lemuria, but that doesn't mean that's Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
That's not Jamie. That is probably part of my soul out there that's concurrently having that experience in Lemuria, which I have an understanding of time that says that that's happening right now somewhere else in a different dimension on a different parallel timeline. So I'm not going to help anything by attaching to that.
Mm-hmm.
The point that I'm making is that what they've told me is that that just means that you're able to use those different experiences of your soul as guides.
Yes.
So those act as guides for you, because
Absolutely.
it's like your higher selves, all these different higher selves that are coming down from that oversoul are able, we're working in the same energetic field. It's like a soul tribe, but it's literally your soul helping you.
Yeah.
And I think because we're in the third dimension, that makes it a little bit different. We are in a consciousness ascension process. So there are these higher awarenesses happening here, probably in direct contrast to something like, France in the 1890s.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way that I like to, I think having that higher awareness is important. I also just want to say, I think that, yeah, sure, it can be really exciting and fun to think a part of me is having this experience in a past life. Or I'm not saying it's not like fun or cool. What I'm saying is that it's not something to attach to. It's not something to bring into your energy and want to become that thing, or to carry the lessons of that life that you weren't intended to. If you were an artist in France in the 1780s, that's really exciting. Or during the Renaissance, how exciting to be an artist in those times in Italy. Absolutely. You were also probably starving. and you probably were disgusting, and there were probably a lot of diseases, and you probably lived with rats. So let's not attach to the experience.
Yes.
Let's say that's really cool. Maybe that means I have creativity that lives in my soul. How can I explore this as myself here?
Yes, exactly.
And is that part of my blueprint for this lifetime?
Mm.
Let's look in your timeline and find out. And let's
Yeah.
clear out the rats and clear out the disease
Mm.
and let you flow and be the creative artist that you intended to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what we're really talking about are the makings of karma, which is really what I help clear for people. When we're
Yeah.
trying to help you let go of this attachment to your identity as someone else, what you do when you claim identity as someone else is typically you ignore the good stuff and you take the baggage
Yeah.
and you put it in your car. You take it out of their car, put it into yours, and it's not yours.
Yeah.
You've essentially stolen from someone. And so now you're just driving along with it. There's no place for it because you didn't make room for it in your life, really. You're just holding on to it. And there isn't room for it in your life. And there isn't room
Right.
for it in your energetic structure. If you try and make space for it, things going to get really gross and wonky. You're going to feel out of alignment. And so the work is to just put it down, right? Because
Yes.
neither you nor that other person really needed that.
Correct.
You're not doing a service by taking the baggage from them. You're sort of just duplicating it and giving it more energy and power. You're saying, "Oh, I'll take two, please," and then you take one.
Yes.
And it's really useless. Now,
Yes.
karma is not always negative, right? We just described the creation of a negative cycle, a negative karmic pattern. But what
Right.
you were talking about is creating positive karma, for lack of
Yeah.
a better term. So you absolutely can use these other lives as guides, and you can be a guide for these other lives as well. I connected with as far as a linear perspective goes, a past life. And it was this point in my life where I was just like, I'm so gross. Like, I couldn't stand myself. I felt disgusting. And I connected into this other life who was probably in Vietnam or something like that centuries ago, a guy who felt shunned because people thought that he was ugly and disgusting. And he had just sort of accepted that about himself. But it felt like me
Yeah.
because I'm like,
Right.
oh, dude, I see you. Like, me too. But then I was able to look at him and be like, you're actually a really beautiful soul. And it's these people who are all really acting
Yeah.
disgusting. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You might
Yeah.
look a little different. Like, you might not be up to the standards of what they consider to be beautiful. But I mean, put a little personality behind it and you're very handsome. That was just a way for me to learn about myself. And I'm like, oh, I'm being slightly ridiculous. This is a
Right.
perspective. But what was really interesting about it is being in that space where I was in my space, but also in his as well. It really highlighted how it felt like right now.
Yeah.
You're in that space of multiplicity, of oneness, where all things are happening concurrently. And it sort of proves itself. It's one of those self-evident truths, right? Where when you're in that moment, doesn't it feel like right now? Doesn't it feel like concurrent? It can't
Yeah.
possibly be past. Because
Correct.
if it was, you wouldn't be able to touch it. All things are happening right now. That's how it
I've
is.
heard, yes. And that's the same with memories.
Yeah.
Memories don't exist because they're in our brain. The way that memories are actually accessed is we create it in the present moment. We recreate the memory. And that's not to say that those things didn't happen. It's just further validating what you're saying, that we're creating it in the moment. That time is not linear. It is all happening at the same time, which is why inner child healing works, which is why you can do future self coding so that you can go into your future timeline and give your future self little hints of, yes, this is where we wanted to go. Here's the little guide that tells you that. And it also speaks to why we can do something like ancestral healing, past life detachments, and deep timeline healing, because we have the awareness of that multiplicity, of that oneness, of being able to go into consciousness and time and space and say, this isn't, time and space are kind of an overlay. And we have enough consciousness to understand that and get into what's the source of why you're feeling this thing. If you're repeating a cycle, let's figure out what it's attached to and let's remove that. And then let's see why you're actually here. Let's activate and attune that blueprint. And then let's help move you forward. And hold space for you to be able to do that, because it is a lot of energetic work to do that. From a client perspective, it requires a lot of trust, and it requires being ready to accept that.
Yeah.
I'm accepting that I'm ready to let go of this cycle and that it's not mine, especially in the ancestral and generational family. It really hits inside of the heart. If you come from a line of women who were stuck in poverty or abandonment or had some sort of generational trauma that they continued to repeat for whatever reason, I think often people believe that there's something they have to actively do in their physical life to make that change. And often it's just getting into these timelines and saying, well, actually, you're just pulling on that family line. Let's make it so much simpler for you. It's not that you won't still have to deal with the trauma that you've already experienced up to this time. That is very valid and that's very real. But let's go ahead and make it so that you're no longer carrying the baggage of what everybody else brought to the table. And then that, again, frees up that person to begin to live their life in the way that they intended to. And sometimes bring families closer, or at least create the energy for families to begin to come back together in a way that feels good for everybody. Because that's the thing, is if we're talking about like ancestral wounds, if I heal something for me that's living in my feminine line, it's not just me that feels the effects of that. My mother's life begins to change. My aunt's life begins to change. My grandmother begins to have new awarenesses and perspectives, because their higher self is understanding that they're no longer tied to that thing. Doesn't mean they're always going to take the invitation, but it's at least given. And that's why I think we call it deep, because it's not just you. It's not just you. It is the full web of people that are existing and living around you. It's your children, it's your spouses. Everybody's going to feel the energetics and see the changes in you as you let go of these old cycles and become your full self.
I like to hear you talk about ancestral work. I tend to work more in the idea of like concurrent lives. And Jamie tends to work more, I mean, you do work akashically, but you tend to specialize more in ancestral lines and things like that.
Yes, it just seems to be part of the work that is intended for me to do. And it's interesting because I have a multi-perspective when I'm working, because there is this higher understanding that I have, and the way we've already talked about it, right? That everything's happening concurrently. So if everything's happening concurrently, how is an ancestral line affecting things? Because that's happening concurrently. So it's it requires a little bit of like awareness, but the way that I've best been able to reconcile it and why it is so important is because me as Jamie does have a linear lineage. I have a lineage in which I come from. They're not me. They're not my soul aspects. So it's somebody else's soul aspect having an experience alongside mine. So it's like multiple concurrent souls existing within this space. And it excites me, because like, how cool that we can affect not only me, but then somebody else's little blueberry tin of muffins. It's a really cool work. And I love the way we've set it up, where it's, let's find what the root is. And then that's kind of like detached from that. And then let's see what's actually you in there. and then let's help that grow. And it just feels really good. And I'm really excited to get into it with people and do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, because it frees, like you said earlier, it frees up so much energy and space. And when you finally put something like that down, again, we talked about this last time, but not only are you giving yourself permission to let go of something that you never needed, you're also giving it permission for other people to do that as well. You're not like dropping the ball or anything. You're not like letting go of people's hands, because I think that's another part of generational trauma, is that you think that it's like solidarity. And
And
if you stop suffering, then all of a sudden you're better than all of these other
yeah.
people who came before
Mm-hmm.
you who are also suffering.
Yes.
And, how can I relate to you anymore? I've changed,
Mm-hmm.
I'm different. But
Yeah.
it's not a gift that maybe even your parents would have wanted you to inherit, or even that you might want to pass on to someone else. So that's the real, I think, the gift of it. And it's also becoming someone who can carry the perspective of, I'm worth more. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
this isn't mine, and it's not that I did inherit it. It's that it's fundamentally not me. It's
Yeah.
fundamentally out of alignment with my ancestral line.
And deserving to have a good life. I
Yeah.
deserve to not have to carry this cycle around. I think the reason, by my estimation, the reason timeline healing, timeline jumping, this deep timeline healing, ancestral clearing, ancestral wounds, and the reason so much of this has become mainstream and people are talking about it is because it's an integral part of the ascension process. It's integral that we begin to release ourselves from this karma that isn't ours, or that has been existing for so long in these lineages. There's that meme that goes around that's like, oh, my soul contract has generational trauma and addiction and like, ooh, yeah, let me incarnate. And it's meant to be humorous, but there's a lot of truth to that. A lot of us came down and said, yep, it's time. Give me it all. Give me it all compacted in one lifetime. I'm ready to we can't play around anymore. We're heading into this age of Aquarius, and I want to do this for humanity. I want to do this for my life. I want to do this for my soul. And that's the very real part of it. At least that's what my guides in Metatron are like. This is what you came here for. It is time to ascend.
Yeah.
This is how we can do it in a quick, easy, let's just get it done, and then let's bring in the good energy. Because the sooner you release from that old timeline, the sooner that you recognize that that karma doesn't have to exist. It is not something that you have to inherit. It's not an integral part of being human any longer. It may have been in the past, but part of the ascension process is releasing all of that. So on a very basic level, it's, hey, let go of the karma. We don't need it anymore. And this is how you can do that. You get into the time and you get rid of it, or you can spend 30 years working it out within your life and seeing if you can untangle those knots. You're more than welcome to do that, but then probably somebody else is going to have to pick up the work that you didn't decide to do, because there's no way that you can continue to do it in this lifetime. That's what everybody's been trying to do for centuries and centuries and centuries that Earth has existed, and it hasn't worked, which is why we're on the ascension process. And so the opportunity is there for us to do this work personally and for others. And as soon as you're able to do it, you're going to begin to see that there's so many ways in which you can use this type of work for other things in your life. It's the messy part isn't even the karma. The cool part of it, the exciting part, is that then you get to live in your blueprint. Then you get to actually live fulfilled and excited and full of energy and ready to move towards a thing. Would you rather spend years unraveling trauma and unraveling these wounds and dealing with all of these energetic cords, which is the way that we show her that it is? It's not only just that you're pulling off of timelines. It's visually, the way that it looks like you're sitting in a spider web and you have all of these different timelines. And that is why people feel stagnant. That's why they feel stuck, because they're stuck in a web of their own time. They're stuck in a web of their own attachments to other things. And as soon as you release those and you really get in there deep and you create the energy and the momentum forward and you place them on their grid and activate that, then it's almost as if those attachments can no longer get in there, right? Because they don't connect to that frequency. It's the overlay that Julia sees. That is your frequency. So the things that are meant for you are going to find you. That's the part that's important. That's the exciting part. That's where you start to feel the energy change and shift, and things begin to move towards you, and they move towards you quicker and more easily. You can sludge through the mud if you would like. It's not that the things that are meant for this life are not still going to find you, but how easily are they going to find you? And what is that journey going to look like? You can still get to the top of a mountain carrying 12 bags of baggage. What do they call them? Backpacks. You can still make it up a mountain with 10 backpacks. But your view and your journey is going to be a lot easier if you're just carrying your one. And that's essentially what we're getting into when we do this deep timeline healing is, let's get you to the top of your mountain with grace and with ease and with joy.
Yeah. We always think that the only way that we can learn something is through pain and suffering. As humans, we tend to think that. But it's also really possible to learn through joy and happiness and ease. It's a karmic pattern for humanity. Pain is one of the worst teachers. You always learn the wrong thing. And then you have to go over it so many times before you're like, oh, this is what I was supposed to. It's
so layered. There's just too many layers to it. I've heard a lot of people ascribe to that. Like the only way you level up is through suffering. And
you
don't have to.
I don't recommend it.
I would not recommend it either. After 39 years, I'm okay to learn with joy and to learn with peace and to just go slower so that I don't keep bumping into chaos. It's almost like the trauma response of, well, if things aren't chaotic, I need to create chaos and self-sabotage because I don't know how to exist without chaos. And it's a hard lesson. I mean, not a hard lesson, but it is challenging. As someone who grew up in chaos, that is probably one of those things that I still have to remind myself of every day is this isn't boring. This is peaceful.
Well, there's so much more opportunity for growth in peacetime. In wartime, growth happens regardless, but that's not the kind of flourishing that you're looking for. It's hard to flourish during wartime.
Let's thrive. It's thriving time, no longer surviving time.
And that's how we create the most magical things that humanity is capable of. It's through peace. I mean, you said so many things that were impactful and important, but you touched upon how karma is not necessary. And I just want to highlight, circle, underline that 3 times for people that you don't need karma. Karma is the way that humans think that they can only learn through suffering. It is not necessary for you to have karma. And when I say I help people with karma, all I am doing is helping you accept the idea that this thing that you're playing with over here that you think you must have in order to achieve something in your life or to move forward with your life purpose is nothing but a distraction. You don't need it. You don't need to solve this karma that you're working out with your relationship with your mother. You want to solve your relationship with your mother? Drop the karma. You don't need it. That's what's creating the issue. And as soon as you let it go, it's not as if it's some sort of Gordian knot that humanity needs to try and untangle. Let it rot. Let it decompose. Let it go. Stop touching it. Stop touching that. And then just focus on you. And so what I do, I call soul blueprint alignments, and I also do Akashic Records healings. Ideally, you would think if just the whole point is to get you in alignment with your grid, with who you are, just give everyone a soul blueprint alignment. I could, right? But at what level are you able to achieve and accept and allow? I can tell you that you're a really accomplished medium that exists for you in your blueprint. And you may just take that as doing nothing but watching Teresa Caputo on TV if you haven't done the work. And so
Yes.
maybe we need to do some sort of ancestral clearing, or helping you let go of karmic ties, or getting rid of this
Mhm.
idea that you were some poor peasant in Boston. Like, you don't need any of that. Let's broaden your perspective and your consciousness enough to think
Mhm.
that, okay, well, if I'm none of this and now I have all of this empty space, which truthfully, as humans, makes us uncomfortable,
Yes.
that as soon as we find empty space, we must create something to fill it, right? And so
Yes.
that's also a lot of the work that we do. We help create empty space, and then we panic over that empty space, which is part of the
Mhm.
process. That's fine. But that's great because you offer support in the meantime. You
Mhm.
do those energetic checkups on people. And
Yes.
once you see this empty space, all of a sudden you're like, oh no, wait, it's not empty. It was calm and it was peaceful, and I'm so used to the cacophony of stress, and I couldn't pay
No.
attention to it, and so now I see it. And so when we have that like empty space, instead of living on like a lava field, now we're in spring meadow, you know. Now
Yes.
we think, oh,
Yes.
life is boring, I must do something to fill it. No, actually, now we can go deeper because now
Mhm.
there's space for it and now you're open to it. So now if I
Yes.
tell you that you have this, you're an incredible medium, you can be like, oh, well, what does that mean for me? How do I get into that? What does that feel like? What can I do with it? And then eventually the good stuff is, how do I serve humanity with it? And that's when it explodes, and that's when it gets really, really big. But you
Mhm.
can't do that unless you let go of things first.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to help you do here with this, is
Absolutely.
let go of something that you know you're done with, and you're like, how do I let go of it? That's the point.
That was beautiful. I loved how you explained that. I love just in general how we work together, because I do tend to, like you just saw, like I pop off in channeling and then I'm like, I don't even know what point I was making, but I'm glad I made a very good one.
Yes.
That was Metatron. Thank you so much, sir. Or I talk very woo because everything to me is energy. And so I think I do a great job of bringing it down and making it understandable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it really can be difficult to bring this huge, expansive, energetic idea and distill it down into words and then create this concrete image or understanding for it. Whereas you're so like succinct and you're able to be very direct in what you're trying to say. And you want it to be very concrete. It's helpful not only for the way that we work
Yeah.
together to be better, but when we're working with clients, it just helps them to really get the different perspectives while also getting the energy healing that we're both bringing in, just
Mm-hmm.
in different ways.
Yeah.
And the wisdom and the channeling we're both bringing in just in different ways.
Yeah.
But I just love the way we work together. And I
I
think it's
do
okay for
too.
us to say that. I'm going to
It's
be
so fun.
totally
Yeah.
authentic. Yeah.
It would be
Mhm.
no good if we didn't enjoy working together.
This
This wouldn't
is
work.
true.
Yeah.
This would not work.
Yeah.
This would not work.
But it's great that you pull in these big concepts and these big ideas, because it needs to be here first before we can figure out how to distill it and make it something that you could explain to a fourth grader. That's like my whole
Yeah.
thing. I love the quote that if you can't explain it simply enough that you can teach it to a kindergartner or something like that, then you don't understand it well enough.
Ooh,
Which is like one of
yeah.
my favorite things. I love to make something digestible to
Yeah.
people, and so that you can figure it out. Because all of this is not too esoteric. That's the thing. It's
No,
not.
it's not.
It's
No,
just new. And it may
correct.
just be unfamiliar. But
Yeah.
if you're hearing it, there's definitely space in your brain for it, right?
Mhm.
Or it's coming in to create space in your brain for it,
Yes.
right?
I mean, I have two bachelor's degrees, both of them in science. I have a very healthy appreciation and understanding of chemistry, physics, biology, molecular biology, and a lot of what we're talking about, and really most of what's talked about esoterically,
Mm-hmm.
is founded in physics. It's in quantum physics. It's in theoretical physics, but a lot of it is chemistry as well. The basic idea of energy is physics. It is chemistry. It has been around for a very long time. It's just a different perspective of seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Personally, I hate chemistry, and I refused to take physics because it was just more math. And
Right. It
so
is. Yes.
I value that perspective. I think it's really, really cool. But it's easiest for me to understand if you take it from like a humanities perspective, or if you
Yes.
put it in terms of a history lesson, or you put
Yeah.
it in an English class or something like that.
Right.
And so that is how I love to ground it into quote unquote reality. And it's like the storytelling aspect of it, because humans are storytelling creatures, right? Like
They
we
are.
love that
Yes,
stuff.
we
But
do.
it's just it's a truth when you see it in multiple different ways, right? When you're seeing it show up more than just once,
Yeah.
and it can be explained and seen in many, many, I mean, that's what a fractal is, right? Particularly quantum physics is really interesting because it's a modern interpretation of ancient esotericism and mysticism,
Absolutely.
right?
That's
And
yes.
that was the best way that we had to explain that at the time. And when you look at things like how the pyramids were built and how ancient, particularly ancient Arabic civilizations achieved incredible mathematical feats,
Yes.
they probably did that intuitively, you know?
Probably. Maybe
They
they were
probably,
channeling.
yeah,
Perhaps they were doing that.
maybe, yeah.
Yes.
But all this to say that this is so very real, because that's the thing, right? Is a lot of people avoid this work because they don't, how much change can this really actually do?
Yeah.
And I want people to feel empowered that as soon as you take the reins on this, you're going to see ripple effects in your life. I mean, I can give
Absolutely.
myself as an example. I've historically had a hard time connecting into my ancestral line because I have a very galactic vibe about me. It's just always easier for me to connect to the aliens and the strange things. But I woke up in the middle of the night very, very aware and in the Akashic realm that I have an ancestor who, in her time, had locked all of her female descendants from their power. She's a witch, essentially, very aware of what she could do. And it was hereditary. And it's interesting that she works in time and I work in time, but because my witchiness was locked, I have to do it in a different way. And so I became aware of her. I was so mad at her. I annexed her in some strange way that I never knew that I could do, but I was so mad it just happened. And it took me a really long time to get over being mad at her, because I'm like, oh, my first foray into ancestral healing, it's not even someone who's trying to help me out. Hey,
Right.
you always hear like, oh, I call in my ancestors for protection. Like, this lady ain't interested. She wants what I have.
Right.
And it took a bit for me to sympathize with her story and be like, okay, yeah, I'm fighting the patriarchy too. I get it. She came over very early from England and Ireland, and it was witch trialish times. And so she, in an effort to maintain some type of what she calls wisdom, but it's power dynamics, she stole from female descendants to make some type of influence. She had to go underground, essentially. And it made her feel powerful to do that. And so I had to be like, okay, I'm still mad at you, but I understand where you maybe were coming from.
Right.
And as soon as I was able to do that, and sort of, we have a begrudging relationship at the moment. However, when we connected, it was real for her in her time, and it was real for me and my time. And for some reason, that was just the perfect moment for it to happen. But as soon as I started dealing with the quote unquote, I don't like the term curse, but it's essentially the lock that she put on my family members. My mother, who is not about this whatsoever, she supports me, absolutely. She brags on this all the time. She talks about it more than I do. But now she is starting to be more witchy and more open to it. She's like, this happened and you need to explain it to me because I am scared and freaked out. And it's so funny, but you do actually see ripple effects of this in your life. And
Mhm.
that wasn't even the intention. Even though I warned my mother, I'm like, look, I'm going to fix this, and heads up, it's happening whether you like it or not, but it's probably going to, shit's probably going to start happening for you. She was like, thanks. And I'm like, no, it needs to happen. I'm done, you know?
Right.
But it does have real effects on your life and on the
Mhm.
people in your life. And you don't necessarily have to warn them the way I did, but it
Right.
serves them as well, right? Because now my mother and my grandmother and my cousins are all able to come into their own power, and they're all going to be able to make changes in their life. And when you're empowered, you start doing things that are good for you, right?
Yes.
Relationships start healing, and
Mhm.
not even necessarily between you and the person, but also the relationships that they have in their life. It creates this enormous ripple effect
Yeah.
that stretches out so far beyond even your line. And it gets down to like the roots of humanity. Like as soon as we all start saying, okay, that's enough, I'm done with this nonsense, whatever, like in my case, the nonsense my ancestor had created,
Yes.
I'm done. And so now it changes literally everything. Now the women in my life are all fed up with everything and we're changing things, you know? And so it's so real. It's so real. It sounds esoteric. It has real world, visible, measurable effects.
It does. I love that story, not only because it's just a really great story and what a
It's
neat
juicy, right?
experience
Yeah.
it is. It's just such a really cool evidential experience
Mm-hmm.
that you had. But what I love about it is that seeing the changes in you, and as your friend, hearing the experience that you began to have of feeling yourself filled back with power and feeling your and just imagining how, like you just said, you're becoming more empowered. It's a really cool story, and I love that one. And it's
One
just
of
a
my more
prime
interesting
example.
ones.
It's a prime example of what this type of timeline healing can do in
Yeah.
a very grounded way, in a
Yeah.
very real way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that's in my work and in this work, like that's mainly what I hope people get out of it. I don't just want you to just feel good. I want you to
Mm-hmm.
feel empowered. You'll feel good
Yes.
because you feel empowered, but I don't
Right.
want to give you just some like fluff and nonsense
Mm-hmm.
and hope that you just, I don't know, love and light your way into a better existence.
I think that's what makes this so different than other ways that you could perhaps go about this work,
Mm-hmm.
is because it is fast. You do see those quick ripplings, and it does extend so far. A lot of times, as a practitioner myself, when I'm working with somebody doing energetic healing or intuitive healing one on one, I'm helping their personal energetic system, which is going to impact their relationships. Sure.
Yeah.
But one, it's not enough time to get in there really deep unless we have an extended program that I'm working with them. And even then, I can't affect their family's cords and their family's lines because they haven't given me permission to do that work. And so I don't have that kind of amount of time to really get in there deep and do that. It's just, this is much more than surface level. And I think that when you're getting things like something like Reiki or intuitive healing, they can be very impactful, and they can be where you sort of root things out. But in order to gain everything that's being offered in this deep timeline healing, you would have to see multiple practitioners multiple times, and it would take longer. And I think that's what's so impactful and makes this so different, is we're bringing all of these modalities, all of these skills that we have, and we're bringing them together all at once to help maximize getting to that empowered position,
Mm-hmm.
instead of having to spend so much time digging out and making space.
Yes. And
Mhm.
you know what? I don't think we've even talked about the structure of the program yet.
We
We've just been
have not
talking
yet.
about timelines, but this is important, right? Because you're talking about
It
the
is.
usefulness of continuity when you're working with someone, and particularly
Yes,
on a specific issue. So this is an 8-week program.
correct. Mm-hmm.
And we're having at least, what did we decide? 4 sessions.
Correct.
And then in the meantime, we're checking in with you. We're giving you homework. You have things to
Mhm.
do. You're doing these
Yes.
integration practices and these grounding practices, which are
Yes.
fundamental in making sure you
Hmm.
see these changes reflect in
Yeah.
real life. And they don't
Yes.
just stay a nice idea in your head.
Correct.
And so it's a lot of support, it's a lot of intense work, and
Hmm.
you go into this ready to let things go and to see this
Hmm.
change. And if you're willing to put the work in and you're willing to work with us, and we're excited to support you, on
Hmm.
the end of it, you are going to see differences. You're going to see changes.
Hmm.
You're going to see an ease, a lightness, and you're going
Yes.
to feel like an authority in your life again, as if you're in charge.
Because you will be.
Yeah.
You
Hmm.
will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, that's coming out the end of May.
We said the end of May, I believe May 23rd or somewhere around there. And I think that was a really good explanation of everything, like what the program offers. So it'll come out end of May. And then next week we'll be going live and answering questions, kind of talking about what your part in this is as a client. And so we can go a little bit deeper into what each session is about.
Yeah.
If you have any questions about that, what it actually looks like, and then we will answer any of your questions.
Yeah. That'll be
It's going to
fun.
be exciting. I love going live. I love answering questions.
Yeah. Me too. It's been a while since I've been live, but I think we decided going live on Facebook and then we'll upload it onto YouTube afterwards.
Yes.
But we will be back for a final
Mhm.
episode. And then
We
after
will.
that, we're probably just going to immediately launch the program. So
Yep.
that's what it's funny that we didn't talk about what it actually was until now.
Well, I think it does require some background
It
information, and that's
does.
okay. It
Yeah.
was a cool conversation, and we can get to the meat of it when we need to.
Next week, we will do that.
Yes,
Yeah.
we will. Okay.
All right. See you next time, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.